Sherborn. I'm now a Medfield resident, but I'm sneaking in anyway. I'm the moderator here at Pilgrim Church, and in that capacity, I'd really like to welcome you all and thank the two entities that have organized this program, the COA and the Outreach and Engagement Committee of Pilgrim Church. So I hope you'll continue to stay plugged into this series. I was here last week and it was fabulous. Today, Melinda Morlé is going to speak to us, and I'm going to just turn it right over to her.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for coming to our second speaker series in this four-part series. Last week we had Samantha Gentile from Generations Law. She talked about estate planning, so if anyone missed it or wants a recording, I just want to thank Doug Ambos for recording it. He uploaded it to YouTube, and I'll be sending out an email later today or tomorrow with that link so you can share it with other people. I'm speaking today, and then next week you won't want to miss. We have someone from Life Care Advocates coming, Anna Pollack, who I've known for a long time. She's fabulous. She is sort of an elder care expert, so you won't want to miss next week's. And then the following week is going to be Eric Burt, who's a financial guru. And so he is going to talk about pitfalls and things you really need to consider when planning for long-term care. So we hope you can make all four sessions, and if you can't, you can sign up for whichever you want. I do want to just talk about a little bit about when Bert and I came to talk about what we were going to do during these four sessions. He mentioned doing a bit of a recap of the Should I Stay or Should I Go series. It was really great. It gave a lot of options, but thought maybe we could just do a deep dive and a recap. And I thought I could do this for folks. Just to give you a little background, my name's Melinda. I work at the Sherborn Council on Aging as the outreach worker. But before I came to Sherborn, I started my career off as a property manager, and I don't know if everybody knows this, I did affordable housing for older adults and people with disabilities. And I also did subsidized housing, which is different. Some people don't realize that. So I did both affordable and subsidized housing. And I loved it so much, I went on to work at assisted living communities. So I got a lot of great experience and sort of saw a lot of different family situations that went through those assisted living communities. And then I took some time off to start a family, and when I went back, I did Medicare counseling through the SHINE program. Has anyone used the SHINE program before? Nice, okay. For those of you who don't know what it is, it helps people with Medicare questions, but what folks don't know is that we do a lot of mass health, and we do long-term Medicaid. So Samantha Gentile last week talked a little bit about long-term Medicaid and how she helps with it. What SHINE does is we help people apply for long-term care Medicaid, but people who maybe don't have a lot of complicated assets. So we do the easier applications. So that's a little bit about my background. So I've been in kind of different housing arenas. But today I just sort of want to go back to the first talk of should I stay or should I go? And for those of you who were here, you remember Melka Young, who's a great speaker from Jewish Family Services. And she got into the planning process, things to consider and what to do. And so I don't know if since that talk, have any of you started your long-term care planning journey or just thought about it? Hey, you thought about it. That's a start, right? So if you take a look at the handouts I gave you, I hope that they inspire you. The first handout is a password log. I don't know about you, but I must have 50 passwords, and God love me, I can't remember one of them. So it's a log, someplace you can write it down. I know there's lots of apps that you can put it in, but this is just sort of simple. Keep it simple, right? The next handout is going to be just something you can fill out, talking about, your medications, who your doctors are, who your tax person is, who your financial person is. So just to keep all this information in one space. Now, where did I get this checklist? I got it off AARP. They have a 200-page checklist for caregivers. And I don't know about you, but I'm not filling out 200 pages. So I sort of shortened it for the most important pieces, but you can go online and make, digital copies of these things. On the last page of that checklist, you'll notice there's important documents you should have. And then there's a column of where to find them. This is a great thing to give to the person that you choose who's going to help you in an emergency. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want someone searching my house like it's a crime scene, trying to find my financial documents in drawers that I don't want them to be opened. So this is a great thing for you to have and start filling out. And maybe there's some documents here that you don't have. Maybe your will is so old that it's done on a typewriter. So as you're pulling up these documents, try to think of how long ago did I do this? Does it need to be redone? And then the final handout that I gave you is starting your long-term care plan. So you'll see there's a plan A and a plan B, and that's what Malka Young talked about. And I know for a lot of you, plan A was staying home, but it's good to also have your sort of plan B written down. And maybe you want to start doing some research and jotting down some thoughts. And as everybody knows, things don't go according to plan all the time. But I guarantee you that in my experience working in senior housing, that the people who plan fare much better than the people who just leave it to a whim. And it was funny, when I was thinking about planning, I have a daughter in high school who's planning to go to college, which is a big sticker shock for me. And so I was thinking, wow, we do so much planning for college and for our weddings. I know girls who have 5-ring binders for their weddings. We plan our careers, we plan buying a house. But when it comes to long-term care, for some reason, people just don't want to think about it. And I called my mom and I said, hey Mom, do you have a long-term care plan? And she goes, oh God, no, why would I want to do that? I'm like, you're not helping me. But that brings me to this statistic here. They did a survey a few years ago. And the question they asked is, have you had a serious conversation with your spouse or your child or anyone and find out who will take care or who will help you when you need them? And only 43% said that they had a serious conversation. So not even a plan, just a conversation. Only 43%. They went on to ask, have you had a serious conversation about how you're going to pay for health care and support if you become seriously ill? And even less folks, only 39%, had ever had a conversation about how they're going to pay for it. So I think you guys are ahead of the rest in that you're even here because you're already part of this 39%. Before I get into, sort of a recap of should I stay or should I go, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the aging network in Massachusetts. Maybe some of you have used some of the aging networks, or other people have no idea that we even have an aging network. But federal and state funding goes to the Executive Office of Aging and Independence, and that's in Boston. What they do is they take that funding and trickle it down along with policies and advocacy to the councils on aging, which are in each town, and also the Aging Service Access Points, or ASAPs. For Sherborn, the ASAP that covers our area is called Springwell Elder Services. Just curious, has anyone ever used Springwell Elder Services? No? Okay. They're there. They exist, and they have lots of programs. We both have the same mission, is to help people 60 and older and their caregivers. So I talk to lots of adult children. And our goal is to provide programs and services to help people maintain independence. And that's at home or, in assisted living or wherever you need to go. The great thing about Massachusetts is they have something called a no wrong door policy. So if you call me with any question at all, I'm not going to say, sorry, not my job, find someone else. It's my job to make a warm transfer, to find the person who can answer your question. And that's what the no wrong door policy is. So the great thing is you can call the Council on Aging on just about anything. So if you have a question about you need a handyman, you can call the Council on Aging and we'll help you locate somebody. Springwell and the Council on Aging have some overlapping services like information and referral. I can remember when I was in college and Google just came out, And it was amazing. It was like an encyclopedia on the internet, but now it's turned into sort of a trash bin. So you go to put information in and you want information to come out and it's just a bunch of trash and you've got to sift through it. So if you have questions, you want a list of assisted livings, rather than just Googling it, you can call Springwell or call the Council on Aging and we'll sort of help you to narrow things down. Much better than Google can. Springwell also offers home care, which is based on your income. So if you have very low income, the home care may be free. If you have a little bit of income, it might be a sliding scale copay. One thing to note though about Springwell Home Care is that it's based on eligibility and availability. Because it's for lower income folks, there may be a wait to get those services. The Ombudsman program, does anyone know what an ombudsman is or used an ombudsman? Yeah, Bart does, okay. So it's a great program. It really, what they do is they help people who are in nursing homes or assisted livings with complaints, care complaints. So let's say you're in a nursing home or your loved one's in a nursing home and you're very upset about something. You've already gone to management and you're getting nowhere. You can call the ombudsman and they'll do a personal visit. They'll research both sides of it and try to come up with a solution. And so that's their job. The Family Caregiver Support Program is wonderful and they have case managers. Options counselors are people who can help talk to you about housing options and also how to transition. So they're sort of the transition experts. And one thing that they really focus on is getting you from the nursing home back home. And so that's what these agencies are really focused on, is how can we get you from a nursing home back home safely so you don't end up back in the nursing home. They do Meals on Wheels, Adult Protective Services, and if you do have to go to a long-term care nursing home, they're the ones that do the clinical assessment for that. So we're talking a lot about paperwork and finances, but there's also a clinical assessment that has to be done. Here at the council,
Melinda,
yeah.
when you say that, is that a state requirement that they have to do an assessment on it?
Yes, yeah,
So-
that's a, yes.
So if a family's looking at it, they make contact with either Springwell or Council on Aging?
Yes,
Make
yes, yes, it's a good question. So yes, that's a state, the question is that a sort of state requirement that the ASAP do, or Springwell Elder Services do these assessments for nursing homes? Yeah, yeah, that's a state requirement, yeah. Yeah, question?
What is the, you mentioned that this was for low income. What is the range?
That's a good question. Don't quote me. There's a certain income limit for home care where it can be free. I want to say it's around $60,000 if it's free or sliding scale income. So it's not dramatically low. I would call it more moderate income. But that's a good question. If you want specific details of what the income limits are for home care, you can certainly call Springwell and ask them their income limits, or you can call the Council on Aging. The good thing about the Council on Aging, like if you call me and you tell me your income, I'll just screen you for everything. There's about 20 programs that I have on one sheet and I'll screen you for everything. But it's not as low income as people think. You don't need to be destitute to get home care.
Is this on the internet by any chance?
No. No, the question is, are these income limits on the internet? I've never seen them on the internet, but they could be, but I've never seen them. They change very often, so usually they have a screening process for home care, yeah. The Councils on Aging also offer a variety of services, information referral. We have Zach from the fire department today. We work a lot with the fire department on the Senior Safe Grant. Which is a grant that they received in order to help seniors stay home safely. One of the things, just one of the many things that the SAFE grant covers, is things like checking your CO and your smoke detectors. Because a lot of times I'll go into homes to meet with someone and I'll look and their smoke detector is yellow. And I know it didn't start off yellow. So if your smoke detector is yellow, call the fire department and have them check them, because they're probably old. So even if they are working, if they're old, you still have to replace them. People don't realize that. But they do a lot of other things, check for trip hazards. I've seen Zach pump out basements. I've seen Zach check generators. We're lucky here in Sherborn where the fire department really steps up. So kudos to you guys. We also help lower lower your costs for housing. That's what the COA does. One of the feedback questions was, what things did you want me to talk about? And somebody put, how do I stay home affordably? And so the COA can help you do that. Call me, let me know your income. It's totally confidential. Quite frankly, I'll forget as soon as I hang up anyways. So, and we help with Medicare. We talked about Shine a little bit, medical equipment donations, advocacy, and of course we do fun programs and trips, which is what everybody loves. Does anyone have any questions on the Aging Network? No, okay. So during the Should I Stay or Should I Go series, one of the things Malcolm was talking about is considerations, and so I made this chart. I'm sorry if it's a little small. I know that was one of the feedbacks, is to make things bigger, but it's easier said than done sometimes. So I made this chart talking about the different aspects of staying home, because let's face it, I think the majority of you, from what I gather, want to stay home as long as possible. So if you take this first quadrant, healthcare and activities of daily living, that's a huge one. That's probably the most expensive one. If you are staying home and you do have an illness and need a lot of care, private paying for a home care agency is probably the most expensive route you could possibly go, because you're paying all day for a caregiver. Most people don't need all-day caregivers, but even still, it's very expensive. So there are private pay agencies along with subsidized agencies like Springwell. Has anyone heard of the PACE program? Oh, Sally has. We got one taker. So PACE is something that not a lot of people know about, but it's an amazing way to be able to stay home even if you have a serious illness or memory loss. It's hard to explain. It's the program of all-inclusive care. And I'll explain it by a little story. We had a couple within our family who wanted to stay together in their home. They lived in a 55-plus sort of mobile community. But the wife, she was tiny. She was probably 80 pounds soaking wet. And the husband had memory loss, and he was just a big guy, and there was no way she was going to be able to take care of him. So as his needs grew, they got on the PACE program. They qualified for the PACE program. What happened was somebody came to their house, got him ready in the morning, helped him with activities of daily living and nutrition. Then they would take him to a day program for memory loss where he could meet with nurses, doctors, whoever he needed to meet with. It's all part of the PACE program. At the end of the day, they would bring him home, continue to help at home with activities of daily living, and then they would leave and come back the next day. So it was really only the overnight that she had to help with. Other places, you can even live in PACE communities. So there are sort of round-the-clock PACE communities. There's not a ton of them, but they exist. So it was a great way for this particular couple to stay together through their last days. And sadly, he had memory loss. She didn't, but they did end up passing within a very short time period of each other. But they were able to stay home with this program. So
Who
it's really
administers the program?
Who administers the program? That's a good question. I know it's state money. It's administered by different agencies. So like for Sherborn, it's Fallon Health. Even though you don't have Fallon health insurance, and Fallon's not a big player for health insurance in our area, Fallon is the one who administers PACE for our area. And there's a lovely lady who comes out to your house and does an assessment, and she tells you all about the program and if you qualify. The cool thing about the program is if you're under a certain income, it's free. If you're over that income, it's a sliding scale copay. And let's say you're way over the income limit, you can still get it, but you private pay. The cost for that is around $5,000 a month, which, yes, is expensive, but when you look at home care and you're looking at it for 12 hours, $5,000 a month is not as much as home care. Yes?
Does long-term care insurance come in at that point?
Does long-term care insurance come in? So I don't know, that's a good question. I don't know about the PACE program, if long-term care insurance would pay for that. I would assume it would. But every long-term care insurance policy is written differently. I've never seen two policies that look alike. Some of them don't even have assisted living built into them. So you have to look at your long-term care insurance policy and ask them directly, because you might need maybe 3 activities of daily living for the long-term care insurance policy to kick in. So, but if you're in the PACE program, you probably do need some activities of daily living. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah.
So if somebody were to want an assessment through the PACE program, would they contact COA and then you put the...
Absolutely. The question is, how do you get an assessment for PACE? And the answer is, yes, you can contact PACE directly. They do have a website on mass.gov where you can put in your zip code and search your local PACE area. Or you can just not do that and call the COA and say, hey, who's the local PACE rep? And we'll know. We'll know because everybody calls us because they want us to know who they are. So also with healthcare, Shine is a great program talking about insurance. I've had bad insurance and I've had good insurance. And I know you get treated differently when you have the different insurances because I've been through it. So the great thing about Shine is you can talk to them and say, hey, look at my insurance. Are there any downsides to the insurance plan that I have when it comes to long-term care or getting ill? Does anyone have any questions about that? I love how you just jump in. That's better. Make it more of a conversation. So the next sort of realm of things you have to consider is your home cost, which are also pretty big, and modifications to your home. During the Should I Stay or Should I Go series, they had a wonderful company come in and talk about home modifications. Christina, do you remember the name of that company? No. All right, well, actually inside your folders there is links to the YouTube recordings for all the Should I Stay or Should I Go series. So if you're interested in rewatching the home modification, you can go do that. There are loan programs. So let's say you want to do a ramp, but hey, you don't have $5,000, sitting somewhere that you can access, or you just don't want to access it. You can go through loan programs. So SMOC, or Southern Middlesex Opportunity Council, is the agency that oversees things like the home modification loan program and utility savings program. Mm-hmm. The utility savings program saves help on heat. And the income limit for that, I want to say for a single is around $45,000, give or take, and a couple is around $63,000, I think. Don't quote me on that. But if you do qualify for the fuel savings, then they also will consider you for upgrading your heating system, which is great. And those are some free opportunities out there. Assisted devices and loans through the Easter Seals, that's at 0% for things like ramps. So that's another program that you could modify your home with. We talked about the Senior Safe Grant, and then there's tax deferral. And I'm always so surprised. Does everybody know what tax deferral is? No? So property taxes is one of the biggest costs that I hear about. I've come to Sherborn 4 years ago, and I've learned more about property tax than I ever knew before. It's a big doozy. And so sometimes people think, how am I going to stay in my home and afford the property tax? Maybe I should get a reverse mortgage. Well, stop. Before you do that, because that could be financially devastating, before you do that, think about if you had your taxes deferred, would that help you stay home? And there is income and asset guidelines, but they're not crazy low. It's not like impoverished guidelines. So if you're curious about that, you can call the Council on Aging or the Assessor's Office. What it does is it defers your property tax until the house is sold. And it's a really low rate. I think each town has different rates, and Sherborn has a very, very low rate. So it's like 1% or something. It's really low. So that's a great opportunity to consider when you're thinking, how am I going to pay to stay? So let's go over to errands and rides. That's a major thing, because if you have an illness and you can't get out, you can't drive anymore, transportation can be really something that makes people feel isolated. So here in Sherborn, we have Dial-A-Ride through the MWRTA. Has anybody used Dial-A-Ride? No? Well, right, you have. Okay, so Charlie's used it. Right now it's free through a government grant until June. Yeah, unfortunately, I think after the end of June or July, it's going to go up. But it's going to go up to $3 per way. I mean, I don't even know how they pay for gas with those kind of rates. And I think Boston might be $5 per way. Again, you can't even pay for gas with $5.
You'll find out when you try it. You'll get I have gotten drivers that have no idea where they are or where they're going.
Yeah.
I've had to tell them how to drive.
All right, so Charlie was just saying he's had to give some of his dial-a-ride drivers directions. It happens.
They rode with me, basically.
So that's a great service, and that's free, and that's for everybody. That doesn't matter what your income is. You could be a billionaire and still ride dial-a-ride. You just have to fill out an application with the Council on Aging, and then you just have to give 48 hours notice. So you call dial-a-ride, you set up your ride, and you're good to go. We also have taxi coupon discounted tickets, and the Jewish Family Service has a navigator program. Has anybody heard of this? The navigator program pairs you up with a volunteer who will not only bring you to your medical appointments, but they will stay for them, and they'll take notes, which is great because we talked a little bit about solo agers, or people who happen to be maybe widows, maybe never had kids, or your kids live far away. So that's a great service. That requires an application and very far advanced notice. So if that's a program where you think, hey, I know someone that could use that, get the application in now. That way, if they do need a ride, they can set that up. I think the notice needed for that is like maybe 3 or 4 weeks. So, and the final thing I just want to mention is social engagement. If you have your ducks in a row on everything here, it doesn't matter if you're isolated and you're not socially engaged, you're not seeing people. And I've met a lot of folks along the way who are really isolated. They say isolation is the new cigarette. I guess that's the coined phrase, because they said being isolated is like smoking, I think they said a pack of cigarettes a day or something. It just takes years off your life. I don't know how they did this study. They probably looked at people who were getting out versus people who are just home, not really having a lot of social interactions, and they noticed a big decline. And places like Pilgrim Church and your local churches can be a lifesaver. I was helping a couple, and I was just blown away by how many church people just come out and say, hey, how's this couple doing? Can I bring them a meal? Do they need a ride? Do they have family I can contact? Or I've seen something odd at church. Who can I contact? So your local churches. Liz from the Sherborn Library, she loves to deliver books. She would love to start a book delivery program. We've talked about it. So getting a visit from Liz, getting a visit from the Friendly Visitor program. If you want a friendly visitor, call the Council on Aging. And also our COA Zoom programs. I know Zoom, some people love it, some people hate it, but it's also a good way to see people, and that does count as interactions. And we have a great exercise Zoom community, Christina can attest to that, who have been together for a long time, and they look out for each other. Does anyone have any questions on I hope these are good resources as to how you can stay in your home. And again, it all comes down to if you're feeling like you're missing some of this and you're missing out on one of these quadrants, call the Council on Aging or call Springwell and say, hey, how can you help me with this? Yeah. Great. All right. And then we talked about, or should I go? And I think since our last presentation, some folks have moved to assisted living. I know a lot of people in Sherborn have moved on to different senior options. Again, I'm sorry, this is small. I tried to fit it all and tried to make it as big as I could. Feel free to jump in and ask questions. I didn't want to write down all the communities in the area because they're all so different and it's such a personal choice. As a Shine counselor, I was working with another woman and we were chatting and she was looking at assisted living communities and she ended up picking one because they have a lifetime learning portion to it. Basically, to go to that assisted living, you have to do all the lifetime learning programs there. And I thought that was just genius, and that's why she chose it. So every decision people make is so particular to them. The first one we talked about during the Should I Stay or Should I Go series was the Continual Care Retirement Communities, or CCRCs. And those are those huge sprawling campuses that give you a range of housing and care options on one campus. And the cheapest one that I found, I shouldn't say cheapest, the lowest cost, very good quality, lowest cost, was for a studio apartment was Brooksby Village, and it was $130,000 deposit and then $2,300 a month. Obviously, you get a 1-bedroom, you get a 2-bedroom, it goes up from there, but it was a lot more reasonable than some of the others I saw, which like topped off at, like, for example, in Dedham, Newbridge on the Charles, some of those places, or North Hill. Some of the bigger communities were $1 million plus $5,500 a month. So big range there. Do you see how there's just a huge range? And of course, different amenities. One of the things about these communities to consider is what would constitute me to have to move maybe from one section to another section. And that answer is so different. For example, one community said, oh, if you need care, you don't even have to move. We bring the care to your apartment, which is awesome. Other communities, you do. You move from sort of an independent living building to an assisted living building, or then to a skilled nursing living building. But what constitutes that move can be completely different in different places. I was talking to somebody and they said that in one place, in the independent community, you couldn't have walkers or wheelchairs. So if you had mobility issues, you couldn't sort of stay in that independent community. And I thought, wow, that's kind of strict. Sally's saying yes. Do you know of a place like that, or no? Does anyone have any questions about CCRCs or anything? You may have visited them or have friends there. No. Active adult and retirement communities, those also are huge range, but they offer you an opportunity to downsize while giving you social opportunities to be in a community. I saw one in, I think, Westboro for $400,000. So that was sort of on the lower end of buying into these retirement communities. And then I've seen them on the higher end, like in Millis or other places where they could be like $700,000, $800,000, even $1 million to buy into these retirement communities. So it just depends on what you're looking for. They offer a wonderful sense of community and amazing amenities. One of the things to consider is the HOA fees or other added costs and the rules. So each place is different, and the ease of selling. It's not as easy to sell and get out of a retirement community because you're looking for a specific type of buyer. And sometimes that buyer even has to be approved, an approved buyer. So it's a lot harder if you're trying to move quickly. Does anyone have questions about retirement communities? No? Okay. Independent living communities, a lot of these are going up now. They're more inclusive because they have options of meal choices and options to add on some care if you need it. The monthly rental rates for these ranged, as I looked around this area, they started at $4,500 a month. But I'll be honest, in this area, I didn't see any for that. It was usually in like the Marlboro area, heading towards Worcester. In this area, I often saw the $8,000 range. So just depends. Closer you get to Boston, more expensive. But some of them have car services that can take you. I mean, really, really fun amenities. The care levels on independent communities can vary in the sense of how much care you can bring in. Some independent communities may say, hey, you can stay as long as you want, you just have to bring in additional private care. So just keep that in mind when you're factoring in your cost in an independent community. Should you need the care, you're going to be private, you may be private paying. Assisted living and memory care facilities are the most inclusive option. With meals, laundry, personal care, transportation. That's kind of the communities that I had worked in or I have experience in, and I can say a lot of the people in there were just really thriving, especially from being home. It was always sort of hard to make the move, and there was probably a 1-month transition period where people have doubts and regrets. But after that month, everybody I saw was sort of happy that they did make the move. And a lot of people move to assisted living when it's sort of pretty obvious that living at home is not a good solution.
Melinda?
Yeah.
I'm jumping back. I was just
Yep.
curious about the retirement communities for that cost. Does any of that money go back to your estate?
That's a good question. So retirement communities are more like buying a condo.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not like CCRCs where you're putting a deposit in. The question is, does that money for the retirement communities go back to your estate? It's more like buying a condo. You're buying into it and then you're selling it. So, yeah, and you know, your property is on Redfin or whatever, homes.com. Yeah. So assisted living and memory care can range dramatically, anywhere from $5,500 a month up to $12,000 a month. The community I used to work in for assisted living had a memory care division, and we actually did an incredible amount of care. We did probably more than most. We would do things like 2-person transfers or Hoyer lifts if people weren't mobile. Let's say somebody had advanced Parkinson's or dementia and couldn't chew food anymore. We would do soft diets, like soft foods. So we did an incredible amount of care, and a lot of people were able to stay at our community with hospice and never go to a nursing home, despite how much care they needed. And so that was sort of a nice thing, because then the families could come and stay with them. And it wasn't a medical environment, it was more home-like, so that was really nice to see, but it wasn't cheap. That was probably more around the $12,000 range. Co-housing and accessory dwelling units. If you remember in the Should I Stay or Should I Go series, a woman came from a co-housing community in Avon. What that means is they build housing all together, centered around like a community center, where people will help each other out. Let's say I fall and break my leg, I could have neighbors come. I'd volunteer to make dinner, go do groceries. So it was a really cool concept. Similar to buying a condo, you're just buying the property, but there is a wait list. And I looked at the one in Avon, and the one that was recently for sale and sold was $1 million. So it wasn't as cheap as I was hoping, but I love the concept. Maybe there are other places cheaper. And maybe your family members or the people who you care about, your chosen family, aren't even in Massachusetts. So when you're factoring in prices, if you go to other states, it may be a lot less. Accessory dwelling units are, of course, I know you folks know a lot about them. You can build now little, tiny homes or something. They have to be, I think, 900 square feet. I'm not an expert on this. You could build something on your property or create an in-law for someone you love. These have a lot of factors that go into them. A lot of construction factors, zoning factors. If you decide to do this, it can work wonderfully. Sort of this multi-generational living is really the way that it's always been done, right? Prior to the boom of senior housing. My husband comes from an Italian family, and so his grandma lived with him. And it worked out great. She loves to make gnocchis and do laundry. It was a perfect setup. But the difference is that they all lived in the same area. Within a 2-acre radius, there were 19 family members she could call on any given day. So ADUs and in-law apartments are great. You just have to have a serious conversation with whoever you're going to be relying on for care, that it doesn't all fall on one person. In my husband's grandma's situation, it didn't fall on one person. I mean, she had so many visitors, she was just pumping out gnocchis, as Sebastian Maniscalco, he's a comedian, would say. But yeah, that could be a great option if it works for your family. Doesn't work for everybody, though. It would certainly probably overwhelm someone who maybe is an only child, someone who's working, or if they have their children. And then there's home sharing and co-living, and that's like the Golden Girls model. And when I was a kid, I loved Golden Girls. I loved watching, did you guys watch that show? Yeah. And I always thought they were friends first, and then they moved in together, but they weren't. They moved in together because of their circumstances, and then became friends. So I think, was it Blanche was a divorcee, and the other ones were widows, the other cast members. So home sharing is something that is still an option. Last year we had the Framingham Council on Aging outreach worker come to talk about the home share program they started in Framingham. They started with Jewish Family Services. So I called them the other day and I asked them, how is it going? Have you coupled people together? And they said they have. They currently have 3 apartments available around, well, you know, apartments or rooms around $800 a month. So I thought that that was a great option. They said one apartment is even going to be $500 a month if the person can help with X, Y, and Z. So I think this is a great opportunity because then you have some oversight too. You're not just moving into somebody's home not knowing what they expect of you. There's background checks and there's, you know, things you have to sign to put into place. So something to consider. Does anyone have any questions about any of the, yeah, Tom?
Is it generally true that with CCRCs that to be admitted, apart from financials, you have to be vertical, mobile, and be able to count backwards from 100 by 7s?
Wow, that's a good question. That was a really detailed question. Do you have experience? Did somebody
I
ask
have
you?
friends who've, one friend actually flunked the test.
Oh no. Wow, so Tom was just saying, in terms of the CCRCs, when you're being sort of interviewed to move in there, there's all these requirements that you're mobile, you're vertical, you can count back from 10. If they made me do the alphabet backwards, I don't think I could do it. I would just walk out. And that you had a friend who didn't pass the test. And that goes back to that question of sort of each place is so different. So you have to ask these questions and you have to visit places so that you can know. There's questionnaires online. Last year we had a lady from Mass Allah who came. Allah is the Assisted Living Federation, Assisted Living Association, something like that, I'm sorry. On their website they have a checklist that you can bring to each place, and if I were looking at CCRCs, I would bring a checklist with me to ask, what are your entry, you know, what are your entry qualification standards? And at what point might you move me? Because I don't think anyone likes to be moved without sort of knowing ahead of time. But that's interesting feedback, yeah. So the CCRCs may be looking for more independent people who are there, who are able to live there for a longer time versus just going in needing care right away. Yeah, good point, Tom. I'm glad you brought that up. Does anyone else want to bring up things from their experience too? Yeah, Frank.
Are there any guidelines available for a co-living type situation for a homeowner who wants to bring someone, who wants the opportunity to bring someone else to share living space?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Frank asked, are there any guidelines for these co-living places? If you're a homeowner and you say, hey, I have this huge house, you know, what are the guidelines? There's, of course, Nesterly has some guidelines, and then the home share program through Jewish Family Services have some guidelines. There are also laws. If you're going to ask somebody to do work for you, you really need to look at the au pair laws. And in Massachusetts, they're pretty strict. You can't just be like, hey, you can live with me for free, but I'm going to put you to work, you know, 16 hours a day and pay you nothing. So you can't do that. So there's definitely a lot of legal things to consider, and that's why I think hooking up with a home share program like Jewish Family Services and the Framingham COA is a good idea. You don't have to live in Framingham, by the way. I keep saying Framingham COA. It's just a pilot program. You don't have to live in Framingham. So there is somebody from Sherborn who had contacted them to start the process. They ended up finding a family friend to rent the space instead. But yes, there are certain guidelines and things you have to follow. Here's the caveat to that though. I don't know how legal everything is. So you may want to have a lawyer, if you're really concerned about it, have a lawyer look it over. How hard is it to kick someone out? Because I don't know about you, but I've got paranoia. I watch way too much Netflix, true crime series, and I've got paranoia that somebody's going to be squatting on my property and I can't get rid of them. Does that answer your question?
It does. I think I maybe misunderstood
Okay.
your situation with the Jewish Family Services in
Yeah.
Framingham. So they don't actually have space available themselves.
Exactly.
They coordinate space with other people who have that space.
Exactly. Jewish Family Services in Framingham, they're the coordinators. They have the paperwork. They'll do the background checks. They'll type up the paperwork and help you decide on an amount. You as a homeowner say, here's my space, and the person as the renter needs to come and look at that space and agree to that space. Yeah.
Thank you.
But again, it's not as legal as renting from a landlord who maybe has a lawyer who looked over their lease. You know, these are things you've got to watch out for.
Right.
Yeah, that's really a good point. Yeah. Does anyone have any other questions? No? So, there are so many options out there. You could just totally get blown away. You know, where do you start? I know, like with me and my mom's conversation, she clearly can't afford some of those on the list. But let's say that she wanted to find low-income housing. She could do that on her own through the CHAMP website. Outreach workers like myself can help. Or there's Housing Navigators, which is a website that helps folks with lower income find affordable housing. Now, affordable housing is different from subsidized housing. Affordable housing is based on the area median income, whereas subsidized housing is based on your income. So your income could fluctuate. Let's say you're in subsidized housing and your medical expenses go up. As your medical expenses go up, your rent goes down. That's not the same as affordable housing. They don't take into account your medical expenses. Let's say you want to look for an assisted living or a CCRC, but you want to find one that has pickleball because you've become a pickleball addict. So you can put all that into the massala.org directory and sort of find communities based on different keywords. You can also call the COA or the Springwell offices to say, hey, what ones are in our area, and we'll give you lists. But definitely start touring. And so I hope, if anything, that these conversations that we've been having have inspired you to just start touring places, making Plan A and Plan B. You can use referral agencies. You guys ever see like a Place for Mom commercials? Those are referral agencies. Two Sisters, Senior Living Advisors, Care Patrol. What they do is they will tell you which communities match what you're looking for. They'll say, hey Melinda, we know a couple that have great pickleball courts. So that they typically get paid from the community, not from you, which is nice. So it's a free service, but the communities will pay them should you move in. And then the final thing is the aging professionals can help. They're usually private pay. They're usually experts. They might even take you to places. The great thing about aging professionals is that they'll also help if you have family dynamic issues. So they help with care plans, transition plans, family dynamic issues. You know, you may have 5 kids and they all have different ideas. And so Life Care Advocates, Anna Pollard, she'll be here next week. She is an example of an aging professional. And then we had Team Impreza come last series, and they help with downsizing and selling your home. And so there's so many wonderful professionals out there. If you can, watch those old videos of our last series, Should I Stay or Should I Go? And we will be recording this series as well. So if you're going to miss any of them, we'll send out that. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? So are you all inspired to make a plan? I have to inspire my mom too. So start reviewing your budget, develop Plan A and Plan B and what fits in with your goals. And the most important thing that I want to end with is share your plan, right? If we all plan but we keep our plan to ourselves, then it's not really helpful at all. So tell your loved ones or whoever's going to be helping you where your plan is. And it might change as things go along, but you know what? You've started thinking about it, and that's good. I put this little quote, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. You gotta love Aristotle. Anyways, all right, well, thank you all. I appreciate it, and I hope you can join us for next week. Just if you could RSVP for next week with Christine in the back, that way we know how many brochures to print. All right, thank you all.
So, Melinda, you're gonna be sending out either dates or, when you do dates that, not when you watch it, but different programs.
The links,
Yeah.
yes, the links.
I think I need to make sure I get my wife to watch those.
Yeah. Okay, we'll send you the link.
She's fighting.
She's sorry.